Welcome back to Hooked Up Video. In today's episode, it's all about how to catch gummy sharks, and we're going to take you through from start to finish on how to catch gummy sharks specifically in Port Phillip Bay. These techniques will work offshore, but we're going to do a focus on Port Phillip Bay, and we're shooting this in winter, and winter is the hardest time to catch gummy sharks in Port Phillip. Reason being is that water temp drops, the fish will often move offshore to warmer temperatures. But the reality of it is you can catch them all year round, it's just more challenging in these colder months. When you're coming towards a full moon, you're going to get more mild current flow, which will make it a little bit easier when it comes to anchoring. You won't need to use as much sinker weight and all those kinds of things because you're going to have smaller tides. There's a bit of a fallacy that gummy sharks only feed around full moons. It's not true. It can be good, but they will feed at any single time of the tide. They're not going to stop eating. Let's say the high tide was at 6 o'clock. I would want to be anchored at 3 o'clock, have my burley down, have my baits down from 3, and I could fish all the way up until 9, so I'd fish 3 hours either side. When it comes to targeting gummy sharks in the bay, we really want to be fishing some form of drop-offs. So the southern reaches of the bay give you that underwater terrain where gummy sharks are going to be, such as near the shipping channels, drop-offs, ledges, all those kinds of things. But it's also that current flow in the southern end of the bay that will have them feeding more aggressively, and that's where they're going to reside. There's a lot of good ground from, let's say, Mount Martha all the way down to Portsea, and on the western side, all around that Queenscliff area, and then up around Mud Island, there's good ground too. I would suggest that if you have it, turn relief shading on your navigation system, and that will show you ledges and contours and all those kinds of things. So you don't necessarily need to be really close to a shipping channel because that can be daunting if you're new to it. And you always need to make sure that you're in a zone that you're allowed to anchor. You can't be too close to where the ship comes through. So do your research, look at your maps, look at your regulations, make sure that you're in a place that's safe and you're not going to get picked up by the police for anchoring in the wrong spot. That covers the where. The other thing that I'm going to stress is when you're anchoring, and you need to be anchoring to catch gummy sharks, you can get them on the drift in some locations, but in Port Phillip we're anchoring. When you are anchoring and you're anchoring in fast current, the rule of thumb is 3 times the amount of rope to your depth. So if you were anchoring in 20 meters of water and you're in really strong current, you need about 60 meters of rope out. Otherwise it's going to be hard for you to hold bottom because you're in some really fast running currents. But the thing to focus on is you want your boat sitting over that ledge or that drop off. So really pay close attention to your navigation, have that relief shading on, have a bathymetric overlay, whatever you use to work out your depths. You really want to concentrate on being some form of drop off. Gummies love feeding in those gutters and feeding along those edges, and that's where they're going to reside. The kicker on this to remember is that when you're fishing in those fast currents and you've got that much rope out, if you let the tide swing you around when that tide change comes, all your lines are going to go crazy for a little bit. That's one thing. But 2, your boat's going to be in a dramatically different spot to where it was when the tide was coming from the other direction. So the best thing to do is when that slack water comes is pull up your anchor, pull up your lines, pull up your burley pop, maybe go off and catch some squid or something like that, come back and re-anchor on the same spot. Now, the big thing about gummy shark fishing is the bycatch. In Port Phillip Bay, you've got a lot of bycatch that are going to be really attracted to your burley and attracted to your baits that are similar kind of sharks to gummy sharks. So the big ones are the Port Jackson, you're going to have to deal with them, banjo sharks, eagle rays, stingrays, 7-gill sharks, school sharks. These are all the bycatch that you're going to encounter, and you're going to encounter a lot of it, and it's part of this fishing. You will notice the difference, and we'll take you through and we'll show you the difference in the way they react to the rods and the way they take the baits. But that's part of it. So that leads us into the gear and the gear that we need. This episode is sponsored by Shimano, and the rods that we're using are the same extraction rods that we used in our snapper extraction video, and we'll provide a link below so you can see that video as well. They're a really versatile rod, and the cool thing about them is that you can use them for your snapper fishing, and you can also use them for gummy sharks as well. They're sensitive enough in the tip for those smaller fish like snapper, but they've got heaps of power, as you'll see through the video, to fight all the bycatch and to also, land you a big gummy shark should it come along. The reels that we're using to pair with these extraction rods, we've got 3, we actually had 4 rods out on the shoot. We had 3 Saragosas and we had 1 Spheros, very, very similar reels. But we're using the 10,000 size in a PG, which is power gear, and that's the reel that you want to use. The 10,000 in the gearing size and that power gear with the low gear ratio is giving you torque for bringing fish up from the bottom. and you really want to have torque and you want a really good quality reel with great gears, and the Saragosa is an amazing reel for that kind of fishing. These things are pretty much bulletproof. They're very, very well priced. You don't have to spend a fortune. This outfit you can use for a lot of different fishing. Obviously your gummy sharks, you could cast for tuna with it. You could troll with it for tuna, schoolies that is. So it's gonna be a really versatile outfit, and all up it's probably gonna cost you around $500-600, but it's gonna last you a long time. It's gonna be really durable, and you're going to be able to do a lot of fishing with it. So when it comes to spooling up your reel, I'm using Grappler, which is a really high quality braid from Shimano, and I'm using PE8. PE8 is a heavy line, but it's gonna allow me to deal with all that bycatch. It's thin enough that you're not getting too much of a bow in the line, because it is quite thin for its breaking strain, but it's also really durable, and it's gonna handle any bycatch you come across. And you'll see in the video, we do come across some pretty large bycatch. And then also, if you get that monster gummy that's like 20 kilos, you want a good braid on it. The next thing that I'm doing is via the best knot that you can tie. I use an FG knot. If you can't tie one, use the best knot you can use, is to join a shock leader to it. And I use a 60-pound monofilament shock leader. It's really important that you have that shock leader on, and I use probably about 2.5 rod lengths. It makes it easy when you're casting. You're not going to get braid cuts in your finger, but it's also there to absorb the shock of when those fish hit and while you're fighting them. And also, because sharks have really rough skin, if you get a big one and it gets tail wrapped or something like that, and it's a long fight, it could cut through the braid. So that's going to protect your braid. It's going to protect your line on the sea floor if it's there, all those kinds of things. So from that shock leader, before we hit our swivel, we need to place on a sinker clip. Now, you all would have seen these before. I don't know this exact brand, ask your local tackle store, but these are the ones I like because it's just a nice short little clip. Now that's going to be free running, and that's going to have your sinker on it. And you'll see these ones come with a steel clip. What I do is I take the clip off and pull that out. All right, keep that for later. Okay, so this is a long rig, and we couldn't quite visually show it to you properly in the garage. So we've come out here to the ramp so you can hopefully understand it. It is just a standard running sinker rig, but with a few differences, and those differences are really important. So we've got our shock leader. We did 2.5 lengths of 60-pound monofilament shock leader, and then we have a plastic sinker clip on that shock leader that is stopping at our swivel, because we then tie a swivel onto that shock leader. We then tie a meter of 40-pound monofilament that then goes down to our sinker. And you can use the metal clip so it's easier to take the sinker on and off. But it's really important that you have that big meter dropper. So it's essentially just a running sinker rig with a big meter dropper. Now, by having that 1 meter dropper down to the sinker, that's going to sit on the seafloor. And then we've got our bite leader, which we're tying at 150 centimeters to our 8/0 hook, and that's going to flow out in the current up off the bottom. What that does is it attracts less pest species like your banjo sharks and your Port Jacksons and that kind of thing, which are bottom feeders, but your gummy will smell it and he'll swim up and he'll hit it. So it's a way of basically attracting more gummy sharks, but also reducing that bycatch and reducing the pests. So again, it's just a running sinker rig, but we're tying a really long dropper, a meter. You could even go more. You'd go 1.5 meters. It's just going to bring it up higher. And then 150 centimeters of 80-pound fluorocarbon is our bite leader, going down to our 8/0 hook. Now, the style of sinker that we're using are bomb or teardrop shaped sinkers, and you'll need to change your weights as the current flow picks up and as it slows down, always using the lightest sinker possible. So you'll need quite a range of them. They are pretty expensive when you're buying these, but you will need a range of them ranging from probably a minimum of 6 ounces all the way up potentially to 20 ounces. And then when you've got all this together, you simply just bring your bite leader, which is our fluorocarbon, and then you can grab the clip and you join them together like this, and then it just sits like that for when you're traveling out in the boat. Then when you get there, you undo it, you put your little sinker on the clip, you chuck your bait on, and you're ready to go. It all does come together quite neatly, and then that way you can just stick it in your combing rack or in your rod holders or whatever you're doing. For when you get out there, you put your bait and your sinker on and you're ready to start fishing. The other thing I need to talk about is the hook. We're using circle hooks. Really important that you use a circle hook. I use an 8/0, and I recommend using an 8/0 hook because it allows chunk baits like salmon or big squid heads or big strips of squid to sit really nicely. And you always just want to drop your bait over the side and make sure that it's not spinning, that it's flowing nicely in the current, because anything that's spinning gummy shark's not going to eat. Pretty much anything's not going to want to eat. So just cut your strips so they're wider at the back where you're placing them on the hook, thinner at the front. A squid head will sit really nicely because it's naturally designed that way. You can use half a squid head. And if you're cutting things like salmon chunks and those kinds of things, they're really good. So that brings us into our baits. And bait's a really important aspect of this. You want to catch the freshest bait you possibly can. You'll have a much harder time attracting the gummy shark with store-bought bait. It is possible, but you really want to go out and try and catch your own bait. So what we do before we go on a gummy session is we always try and catch fresh bait. Easiest one to catch is probably squid, and it's a great bait. What we ended up getting our gummy shark on was cuttlefish. Cuttlefish is actually my favorite gummy shark bait. Whether I'm in the surf or I'm in the boat, I've always just found it an amazing bait. So if you can pick yourself up a cuttlefish, great. But if you can't, other awesome baits are salmon, Australian salmon, and then silver trevally as well is another fantastic bait. The other bait that people love using for gummy sharks is blue throat wrasse. It's quite effective for the anglers using it offshore. For me, the jury's still out on how effective it is in the bay, but comment below if you think that you've had really good success using it inside the bay. For me personally though, squid, cuttlefish, and Australian salmon, they're easy baits to catch, and they're really effective baits to use. So they're the ones that I'd be focusing on. So the other really important thing with gummy sharks is burley. You want to really put out a good burley trail. This is a fish with a really good nose. So whilst your fresh bait's going to be really important, that burley trail could bring a gummy shark in from a long, long distance. So I think it's always important to have burley down. You therefore want a burley pot that you're going to drop below the boat. I always rig mine with a game rated swivel, so it's allowed to spin. I tie it to a bit of Venetian cord. And then the other thing that I use that you would have seen in our other videos, I always have it on a hand line. The hand line just means that you don't have cord or any ropes around your boat that's just gonna make things messy and make your deck messy. You can pick these up for like 15 bucks from any tackle store. Venetian cord you can buy from bulk places. It doesn't have too much drag in it. I don't recommend ever using like thick ropes or anything like that on burley pots. You just want to use Venetian cord. Then you can use this for snapper, whiting, all your kind of bait fishing when you're burleying, and you can just change your pots around or secret weapon burley bombs or anything that you're using. When it comes to what you're putting in your burley pot, stay away from any tuna oils and things like that. I just use pilchard. I think pilchard's got a really strong smell. I don't want to attract too many pest species. If you fill that thing with tuna oil, you're going to get your banjos and your rays and that kind of stuff. So just some nice cut up pilchards or just any old kind of oily fish that you've got. If you've got a heap of salmon left over from baits or something like that, you can cut them up and chuck them in there too. Okay, so that covers all the stuff you're going to need, where you're going to fish, when you're going to fish. The only other thing I'd say is keep it to 2 rods per person. So if there's 2 of you, put your 4 rods out. If you're by yourself, I think it's best to keep it to 2 because you're dealing with all that bycatch, which sometimes you're going to get, every time you cast out, you're going to get bycatch coming along. Sometimes you might not get too many. But if you're constantly pulling in all these other rods and you're concentrating on them, you could miss the gummy shark that comes on the rods on this side. So keep it to 2 rods per person. I think that's the safest way to go about it. Okay, let's get out and get into the fishing. Ooh. Yep, there we go. That could be a gummy. Yeah, I reckon it is. We've got head shakes. All right. Oh, yep. We've got head shakes, so I'm not too concerned yet that it's a ray or anything. Yeah, I reckon this is a gummy. Yep. So classic sign of the gummies, they'll have this first big run. And it can be a really big run. He's got a lot of current to work with here. This one's taken a chunk of that wrasse. And I had wrasse on this side here and I had the cuttlefish on that side. Just give him a little bit more drag, see if we can turn his head. All right, it's a massive gummy if it is one. Oh, cut off. Let's see what happened. So definitely a shark. This is 80-pound quality fluorocarbon. It's scuffed all the way up to here. And then down here, you can see where the teeth have just worn away at it and cut it off. So we're not geared up for catching toothies, even though we're using circle hooks. So that'll generally happen when you get a big fish like that, which is okay. We'll just, this is all part of it. What's running towards me? Oh. Okay. It's a lot of weight there. A lot of dead weight. I don't think this is a gummy shark. I think it's some kind of, I think this is a ray, but I've been wrong before. So I guess fight every fish if it's got some characteristics like it could be a gummy. Fight it like it is. It's actually acting a little bit more like a shark now. Going under the boat, which isn't good. Don't go under the boat, mate. That's just the worst place you can go. Don't go near the engine. Don't go near the Burley rope. Come on. Don't go near the Burley rope. Ah, he's got the Burley rope. Yep, he's going under the Burley rope, which is not good. Wonder if I can come around like this. Can't believe we got it free of the Burley pot rope. That was really worrying me. Here we go. Come on, mate. Get out from under there. 7 gil. Just a big 7 gil. Stupid thing. I'll bring it up so you can see it. Yeah, they're great rods. I mean, this is a big shark that I'm pulling up, and these are the same rods I use for snapper. Yeah, you can see there's the big 7 gil. But he's got that other line, unfortunately. And this extraction's stopped it from going around engines, stopped it from getting around the boat. They're such a versatile rod. The fact that you can be detecting bites from, you know, pinkies, and then come and catch big sharks like this guy. I wonder if I can get... Oh, you just wet my pants, man. Jeez. Thanks for that. He's a big fish. He's messed up all the lines, that's for sure. There, he's off. Wow. I got excited for a second there. I thought it might have been a big gummy, just acting a little bit funny, but the fight wasn't very gummy-ish. He just wasn't active enough. The 7 gil isn't as active as the gummy shark. Still kind of cool to catch, but you know, after you've gotten a few, you get used to it. But goes to show you that, you know, we're not going to get a gummy that's heavy. Just how good these rods are. They're amazing. No, didn't take. No. Fuck, might just leave that there. That could have been a gummy. Well, it's running up towards me. Doesn't feel too pesty. It could be a little gummy. It's too early to call it. There was slight head shakes. Now it's gone just a bit. No, still a bit of head shakes there. A little bit of fight. You can see my FG knot, so he's not too far away. Yeah, that's a gummy shark. All right. Target species. And you know what? He's an eater. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So it was just that telltale sign of him coming up current that made me think, yeah, that's a gummy shark, as opposed to the pest species tend to hang back. So I'll just be able to open up the dive door and bring him through. Now you can see there the circle hooks pinned in perfectly in the corner of the jaw. Perfect hookup. It's a male. And that will provide a beautiful amount of gummy shark flesh. So one of the best eating fish in my opinion in Victorian waters. And I'm happy with that. That's great. Would have liked one a little bit bigger than that, but there's nothing wrong with him at all. He'll be a great eating fish.